Tonight I'm just going to give you a little bit of one little life story that Pam and I have. You know, when old folks get old, that's all we can do is tell life stories because we got plenty of them. But I titled this Blessed by the Best. And if some of you people were at Perimeter Road for any amount of time, there was one gentleman there, whenever you asked him how he was doing, he'd always say, "I'm blessed by the best." And so think about that as we're going through this tonight. Are you truly blessed today by the best? Think about who the best is. And as believers, we know that all of our blessings come from God the Father. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 6 through 8 says, "Now I say to you, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must do just as he has purposed in his heart, not grudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that always having all sufficiency in everything, you may have an abundance for every good deed." So here we see God loves a cheerful giver. Now, this is not going to be a sermon on giving because this church does really good at giving. And God's telling us, be cheerful when you give. Don't be grudging about it. Meaning that, God loves those hearts that are overwhelmed. Meaning that word there, cheerful, means just overwhelmed. I can't wait to get to church and just put that check or that offering into the plate. You're just ready to do it. And John MacArthur, he states here, he says it in verse 8, when God's talking about grace, it's not referring to the grace that leads to salvation, but it's to possessions. It's money. It's things that we have. And what has God placed in our hands today that He is asking us to be watching over that and being good stewards of it? What do we have in our hands today? You think about it at the end of the service every week when we give the benediction, we're holding our hands out. What has God placed in our hands that we have in our possession right now that He's expecting us to be good stewards over? Think about that. And as we think about God's working in our lives, I'm going to give you a little story that Pam and I went through. Right after we got married, it was about a year. We had just bought a brand new house and trying to get settled in, get things, get our finances figured out and how we're going to make ends meet, paying for, having a house payment in the budget. And she comes up to me and she says, "I believe that the Lord is leading me to go back to school to finish my RN's license and get my RN license or degree." I said, "Okay." I said, "And what does that mean?" She said, "Well, I may have to quit work for a little while." And I was like, "Oh, okay." We just bought a house. So we prayed about it, and we figured that's, what God would have us to do. And so she had an Isuzu Trooper that was a really nice, if y'all know anything about Troopers, she had a top-of-the-line Trooper. So we sold it so that we could buy, for lesser words, a hoopty. And that car, I think it was a 1996 Chevrolet Lumina. We paid $3,000 for it. And the rest of the money that we got helped pay for her school. But that got her back and forth to school and to the clinicals that she had to do. But during that time, once she stopped working, we were just living off of my salary. And it got pretty tight, got pretty tough. I know a lot of you have been there. You know what I'm talking about. But God provided every need we needed. That we had, He provided for during that time. That 1 year while she was in school. Now, did we cut back on some things? Yes, we did. There were a lot of things we didn't do. But God provided, and when you looked at it on paper, there's no way we should have made it through that year. We should have been way deep in the red. But at the end of the year, we didn't go in any debt. God provided every need we had. And she finished school and graduated. And so, that's just a little story to tell you that you may think that man, I got to pay that light bill this week. I've been there. I know how you feel. But be diligent about giving. Give something. Maybe you can't give a whole lot, but give something. Think about the widow that gave what she had. And so when you're going through your week this week, think about the things that God has gave you to steward over. And be good stewards. And that's just not necessarily monetary things too. We all have gifts. We all have talents. We all have things that we can do that will help this church and will help this church grow. So what are you using? Think about it this week. What can I use that God has given me for this church, to grow this church in this community? What can I do? What has God given me? And use it. Everything we have is His anyway. He's just loaned it to us. And so He's graciously allowed us to be a part of what He's doing here in this church. And so do everything that you can do this week to think about, what am I holding in my hands? Am I closing my hand and saying it's all mine? Is it mine? Is it really all mine? Or does it belong to the Lord? And think about that as we go through our week.